What would you do if the most powerful lawman in America was handcuffed on his own driveway just for being black? At 9:50 in the morning, FBI Director Anthony Mercer faced humiliation in a neighborhood worth $2 million a house, and cameras caught everything. Stay tuned to see how this shocking story unfolded. Don't forget, hit subscribe, like this video, and share it with 3 friends right now. It was 9:51 in the morning when the sun cast sharp reflections across the glass windows of Silverwood Estates, a gated enclave where $2 million homes stood like monuments to exclusivity. Manicured lawns stretched 30 feet from the curb, hedges trimmed to a perfect angle, and the sound of sprinklers ticked rhythmically as if the neighborhood itself were rehearsing for a silent performance. On any other morning, nothing broke that stillness until Officer Brian Callahan's boots began their heavy crunch across the concrete sidewalk. Callahan had been patrolling Silverwood for 5 years, and in that time he believed he knew every face that belonged. To him, Silverwood wasn't just houses and streets, it was a fortress, and he was its guard dog. So when his eyes locked on a tall black man in a navy blue suit, standing beside a sleek midnight black Tesla Model S, his chest tightened with suspicion. His first thought wasn't business meeting or homeowner heading to work. It was criminal thief outsider. The man adjusted his cufflinks with a slow precision, his posture upright, the kind of dignity that spoke of years in rooms where authority was negotiated, not begged for. His shoes, polished black Oxfords, reflected the morning light. But to Callahan, none of that mattered. He saw only one thing: a black man in Silverwood Estates, and in his mind that didn't add up. "What the hell do you think you're doing here, boy?" Callahan's voice cracked through the morning silence like a whip. The suited man turned his eyes steady, his jaw tight. His tone was measured, even soft, but it carried the unmistakable edge of command. "Officer," he said calmly, "shut your mouth." The exchange froze the air. Birds scattered from the hedges. The sprinklers seemed to hiss louder. Callahan's face contorted with disgust, his authority challenged by a man who didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his right hand reaching to grab the man's wrist. The moment his fingers locked around the skin, he yanked it up to eye level, twisting hard enough to cause pain, but not enough to bruise yet. "What's this, Rolex?" Callahan sneered. "Stolen! You breaking into these houses." The man didn't jerk away, didn't resist. His breathing was steady, like someone who had trained for moments exactly like this. "Take your hand off me," he said, his voice lower now, every word a precise weight. But Callahan shoved him backward. The man's back hit the hood of the Tesla with a metallic thud that echoed down the otherwise silent street. The sound carried 20 yards, 30 yards, far enough that curtains twitched in living room windows. The noise was an announcement, something unusual, something violent, something the residents of Silverwood Estates weren't used to hearing this early on a Wednesday morning. "Turn around! Hands behind your back!" Callahan barked. His hand hovered over the taser at his hip. His posture widened the stance of someone ready to escalate. "Now, officer," the man replied, his eyes narrowing. "Please." The word "please" carried more command than deference, and that infuriated Callahan. He slammed the man harder against the Tesla. "I said, turn around, you piece of trash. You don't belong here." The suit wrinkled under the pressure of the hood. For a second, the man closed his eyes, steadying himself, holding back a tide of rage with sheer discipline. Then he opened them again and said something that would ripple through the morning like thunder rolling across a clear sky. "I live in this house." Callahan laughed. Not a short chuckle, but a cruel, mocking bark that echoed across the cul-de-sac. "Sure you do. And I'm Barack damn Obama. You expect me to believe that?" It was now 9:53 a.m. 7 minutes before the phone call that would change everything. The man's name was Dr. Anthony Mercer. 23 years of federal service. The first black man to rise to the top of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He wasn't just some homeowner in Silverwood, he was the FBI director standing handcuffed in his own driveway, his authority invisible to the officer who saw only his skin. But in that moment, Callahan knew none of this. He smelled the faint mix of coffee and starch on Mercer's suit, saw the polished car, and his mind refused to reconcile those symbols of power with the color of the man before him. ID. Now. Callahan's breath reeked of bitterness. Mercer inhaled slowly, his movements deliberate, trained, controlled. He reached for his wallet, Italian leather, dark brown, with an embossed seal barely visible unless the light hit it just right. A gift from his wife, Patricia, after his last promotion. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the knowledge of how easily this moment could spiral. A twitch, a sudden move, and this could end not with words, but with bullets. Callahan snatched the wallet before Mercer could even open it. He flipped through the contents like he was searching for stolen goods. Anthony Mercer, he read mockingly. What kind of name is that supposed to be? Sounds made up. It's my name, Mercer answered evenly. Callahan pulled out a federal identification card, studying it with squinted eyes, then shook his head dismissively. Where'd you steal this from? Government-issued, huh? Must be fake. At that very moment across the street, Mrs. Evelyn Grant raised her phone higher. She had lived in Silverwood for 3 years and had seen Mercer jogging every morning at 7 a.m., rain or shine. She knew him. She knew his wife. She knew the truth. But more importantly, her live stream was already climbing 200 viewers, then 500, then more. Her quiet voice whispered into the microphone, "This is disgusting. He lives here. I've seen him every day." The comments section exploded. This is 2025, not 1955. Sue them for everything. Call the FBI. This man's no criminal. But other comments, darker ones, flowed in as well. He looks suspicious. Probably casing the neighborhood. These people don't belong there. The divide was clear just as sharp online as it was on the sidewalk. Callahan shoved the wallet back against Mercer's chest. You got a permit for this neighborhood, boy. Rich folks around here pay good money to keep your kind out. His voice was rising now, each word louder than the last, as if volume could make prejudice legitimate. Mercer studied the nameplate pinned to Callahan's chest. He read it aloud with deliberate clarity. Officer Brian Callahan. He paused, his eyes steady. Badge number 4729. Don't you get smart with me. Callahan's hand twitched toward his taser again. But Mercer only leaned slightly closer, his calm voice cutting through the tension. I want you to remember that number. 9:54 a.m. 6 minutes before the world would know who Anthony Mercer really was. The metallic echo of body against steel still reverberated in the cul-de-sac. It was 9:55 in the morning, the sunlight bouncing off polished Teslas and Lexus SUVs parked in pristine driveways, when Officer Brian Callahan's hand pressed harder into Dr. Anthony Mercer's shoulder blades. The FBI director's breath fogged slightly against the glossy hood of his own car, his tailored navy suit crumpling under the weight of force. Car theft, trespassing, resisting lawful orders, Callahan rattled off like a grocery list, each word carrying the smug cadence of a man convinced of his own authority. His grip tightened around Mercer's wrist, grinding bone against metal. He wanted pain, and he wanted it visible. He wanted the neighbors to see him put a black man in his place, even if that black man was the one who signed federal budgets larger than Callahan's entire city payroll. This is my home, Mercer said, his voice low but deliberate. His words did not tremble, though his body was locked in a posture designed to humiliate. Callahan barked a laugh that traveled down the street like a challenge. Curtains stirred. A poodle barked. A jogger slowed his stride. The laughter wasn't joy, it was dominance meant to degrade, to strip away dignity in front of witnesses. "You're home," Callahan sneered. "What's next? You gonna tell me you own the whole damn block?" 9:56 a.m. 4 minutes until the first call that would crack Silverwood Estates wide open. Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the clash of voices. The Hendersons stepped onto their porch, mugs of coffee in hand. The Wilson twins slowed their jog to a standstill, phones sliding into their palms almost instinctively. Mrs. Patterson, leash in hand, stopped mid-walk, her poodle's nails clicking anxiously on the pavement. Across the street, Mrs. Evelyn Grant's voice whispered into her phone camera, "This is outrageous. He's lived here for 3 years. I see him every morning." Her live stream ticked upward, 700 viewers, then 1,200, then 1,800. The digital crowd was forming faster than the physical one. But Mercer didn't look at the neighbors. His eyes stared down at the Tesla's sleek hood, his watch face just visible in the reflection, Omega Seamaster stainless steel, ticking calmly toward 10 o'clock. Every second mattered, every measured breath, another step toward an inevitable collision. He knew. Callahan didn't. "Get up!" Callahan ordered, yanking Mercer upright, only to shove him harder against the car's side door. The thud was louder this time, sharper. Mercer's cufflink, a gift from his wife Patricia, engraved with their wedding date, scraped the paint, leaving a faint scratch. Callahan leaned in close enough that Mercer could smell the stale bitterness of coffee on his breath. "Say it again," Callahan taunted. "Say it's your home. Let's hear it one more time." Mercer's jaw tightened. His voice came steady, even calm. "This is my home," the crowd murmured. Some were incredulous, others doubtful. Richard Dalton, head of the Homeowners Association, stepped forward, his HOA badge clipped proudly to his golf shirt. "We've had break-ins lately," he said, his tone sharp and performative. "Better safe than sorry." His words gave Callahan fuel, the backing of the so-called community. Mercer turned his head, slightly catching Dalton's eye. "I've lived here since 2022. I pay $47,000 annually in property taxes. You've never once welcomed me." Dalton bristled, but Callahan grinned wider. "See, knows the numbers like a con rehearsing his story." The live stream cracked 3,000 viewers. Comments flew faster than Evelyn could read. "This is racial profiling in broad daylight. Someone call the FBI right now. He's too calm. That guy knows something they don't." 9:57 a.m., 3 minutes to the call. Mercer's phone buzzed against his thigh, vibrating with urgency. Director Naomi Grant's name lit the screen, glowing faintly through the fabric of his pocket. He didn't answer. Not yet. Timing was everything. Callahan ripped the phone from Mercer's pocket, waving it in front of the crowd. "Who's this?" "Your parole officer. Your drug dealer." He smirked and held it high for everyone to see. Big, important man on the other end. The Wilson twins were filming now, their voices low but audible. Why's he treating him like that? This doesn't feel right. Callahan slammed Mercer once more against the Tesla, loud enough to jolt the Hendersons from their porch steps. Mrs. Patterson gasped, pulling her poodle closer. Dalton folded his arms, satisfied. Every sound, every gesture added to the humiliation. "You don't belong here," Callahan spat. "Not in Silverwood. Not in a house worth $2 million. Not behind the wheel of a Tesla. Not in that suit. You don't belong, period." Mercer inhaled slowly, centering himself, his voice dropping into a calm cadence honed by decades of interrogations and briefings. "Officer Callahan," he said softly, "remember your badge number. 4729. Callahan stiffened, the words sliding under his skin like ice water. He pushed harder, as if pressure could erase the disquiet. "You threatening me now? Think you're smart, huh?" Mercer didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence was its own blade. The live stream passed 6,000 viewers. Evelyn's voice wavered. "They don't even know who he is. Oh my God, this is going to backfire so badly." 9:58 a.m. 2 minutes to the call. Callahan yanked Mercer's keys from his pocket, holding them up like trophies. House keys, car keys, mailbox key. Could have stolen all of them. Could have copied them. He tossed them to the ground, letting the jingle punctuate his contempt. Mercer stayed silent. His eyes flicked toward the neighbors. Some were ashamed, some thrilled, but all were witnesses now. That was what mattered. Every second was being documented by phones, by cameras, by the growing live stream audience that had just crossed 10,000 viewers. Callahan leaned in, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You think staying calm is gonna save you? You think anyone cares? By the time your little story gets out, you'll already be booked, fingerprinted, and in the system." Mercer looked straight into his eyes. "That's what you think." The tension hung heavy, like the moment before thunder cracks open the sky. Neighbors shifted uneasily, sensing something deeper unfolding. Even Dalton stepped back half a pace, though he'd never admit it later. The live stream surged past 12,000. Hashtags began trending in real time: John's Silverwood profiling, Chan Justice for Mercer. Dana Williams from Channel 7 News was already en route, her van weaving through downtown traffic. 9:59 a.m., 1 minute to the call. Callahan tightened the handcuffs, metal biting into Mercer's wrists. "You're under arrest for trespassing and failure to comply." He began reciting Miranda rights, his tone dripping with satisfaction. "You have the right to remain silent." Mercer cut him off, his voice steady, commanding, quiet but devastating. "And you have the right to remember this moment for the rest of your life." Callahan faltered. Just for a second his hand twitched, his confidence cracked. The crowd noticed. The live stream exploded with comments. "Who is this guy? He's too calm. This ain't normal. Something big is about to happen." 10 o'clock a.m., the call. Mercer's phone lit up again in Callahan's hand. This time, the voice on the other end would shatter everything Callahan thought he knew about power, belonging, and who really policed Silverwood Estates. 10 o'clock and 15 seconds. The phone call still echoed unanswered in Officer Callahan's hand when another voice, softer but steadier, cut through the charged air. Across the street, Mrs. Evelyn Grant stood on her porch, her phone raised high, the camera lens catching every second of the humiliation unfolding. She was 71 years old, a retired librarian with a lifetime of order, silence, and respect for truth. Her voice trembled, but her conviction was firm. "This is wrong," she whispered into the microphone. "This man has lived here for years. 3 years. I've seen him every morning on my walks." Her live stream began modestly. 72 viewers, mostly friends, grandkids, and a handful of church members who knew her as Ms. Evelyn, the book lady. But the scene was too explosive, too raw, too clear. Within 60 seconds, her viewership climbed to 200, then 500, then past 1,000. By the 2-minute mark, over 2,000 people were watching. Her voice cracked as she continued, "His name is Anthony Mercer. He is not a criminal. This is his home. This is his car. This is his life. And they are treating him like he doesn't belong." The comments began flooding in. "This is outrageous. Call a lawyer. Where is the FBI?" But there were darker responses too, trolls and racists who hid behind anonymous handles. He looks suspicious to me. Bet that car is stolen. Cops doing their job. Evelyn's wrinkled hands shook, but she steadied the phone against her chest. She had taught hundreds of children how to find truth in books. Now she was documenting truth in real time, digitized for the world to see. By 10:02 a.m., her live stream had crossed 5,000 viewers. Notifications pinged relentlessly, like the ticking of a clock counting down to inevitability. The Wilson twins, still jogging clothes clinging to their shoulders, angled their cameras too, streaming to TikTok. "Look at this one," muttered. "He's too calm." "Something's up." Officer Callahan, oblivious, barked at Mercer again. "You're going downtown." But Evelyn's stream caught every second, the way Callahan's lip curled, the way his knuckles dug into the handcuffs, the way Mercer's suit wrinkled, but his dignity did not. 3 years, Evelyn repeated to her viewers, louder this time. "I see him every morning. He jogs, he waves, he brings his wife flowers. This is his home." The comments section surged with outrage. "Name and badge number of that cop. This is racial profiling on live camera. Tag CNN, MSNBC, Fox, everyone." By 10:03, 8,000 people were watching. Evelyn's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, edged closer, her poodle trembling on the leash. "Evelyn, should we?" "Film Evelyn," cut her off. "Don't look away. Don't ever look away." The Hendersons stepped off their porch phones out. The Wilson twins raised theirs higher. It wasn't just Mercer against Callahan anymore. It was a clash between silence and witness, between humiliation and truth. Mercer's calm face flicked once toward Evelyn. Their eyes met across the 20-yard stretch of road. He gave the faintest nod, imperceptible to Callahan, but unmistakable to Evelyn. It was a signal, keep filming. This matters. And she did. By 10:04, 11,000 viewers. Hashtags were already forming. Silverwood Estates, Justice for Mercer, Racial Profiling. Dana Williams, Channel 7 reporter, got the link directly from Evelyn's niece and rerouted her van toward the gated neighborhood. Callahan's arrogance fed the camera. He paraded Mercer's wallet in front of the crowd like a trophy. "Anthony Mercer," he mocked again. "Sounds fake." "Probably is fake." The comments erupted. "Wait, Anthony Mercer. Is that who I think it is? No way. Not the FBI Mercer. Check his lapel, pin, zoom in." Evelyn angled her phone, catching the faint gleam of silver on Mercer's suit lapel. The insignia was tiny, barely bigger than a dime, but to those who knew it, meant everything the eagle of federal service. Screenshots spread like wildfire. 10:05, 15,000 viewers. The digital world was colliding with the physical one. Neighbors who had stayed behind curtains stepped outside, pulled by curiosity or conscience. The cul-de-sac was no longer silent. Murmurs swirled, some supportive, some doubtful. Karen Mitchell, HOA treasurer, strutted down the street, in her jogging outfit, voice sharp. "He doesn't belong here. I know everyone who lives here." Evelyn's phone caught every syllable. The comment section detonated. "Classic HOA Karen. She's lying. This is his home. Watch this is about to blow up." Mercer's phone buzzed again in Callahan's hand. The caller ID flashed clear across Evelyn's live stream, director Naomi Grant. Her audience gasped collectively. Comments flew too fast to read. Callahan ignored it, smirking for the crowd. "Probably his dealer," he said loudly. Evelyn zoomed in on Mercer's face. Calm, collected, resolute. She whispered to her viewers, "He knows. He knows something's coming." 10:06, 21,000 viewers. Evelyn's granddaughter texted her, "Grandma, you're trending on Twitter." But Evelyn's focus was unwavering. "This is the truth," she said into the mic. "No one can say later they didn't see. You're seeing it right now." Callahan shoved Mercer again, dragging him toward the patrol car. "Let's go," he growled. Evelyn's voice trembled, but she raised it higher. "Stop! You're humiliating a man on his own property." Her phone shook, but she didn't lower it. Mercer turned his head, his voice carrying across the growing crowd. "This is my home." The live stream crossed 30,000 viewers. Dana Williams was 2 minutes away. National outlets were scrambling. 10:07, 35,000 viewers. Evelyn wiped a tear but kept the phone steady. Her whole life as a librarian had been about preserving truth catalogs, records, documents. Now she was preserving truth in its rawest form, live, unfiltered, undeniable. The crowd murmured louder. Some neighbors shifted uneasily, realizing they might end up on the wrong side of history. Others, like Dalton and Mitchell, stiffened, doubling down. But Evelyn's livestream was a tidal wave. No one could stop it now. 10:08, 42,000 viewers. The sound of engines carried in the distance. Dark SUVs moving fast. The livestream audience erupted. "Those are feds. Something big is about to happen. Stay live. Don't stop filming." Evelyn's lips tightened into a line. "I won't stop," she whispered. "Not until he's free." 10:08 in the morning. The air in Silverwood Estates was thick now, not from weather, but from tension that clung to every neighbor, every word, every second. Mrs. Evelyn Grant's live stream was surging past 42,000 viewers. Her trembling voice had given the world a front-row seat, and phones across America were buzzing with notifications of a story that would not stay contained. Then came the sound that made Mercer's jaw tighten, another set of sirens. From the far end of Maple Court, a white and blue patrol cruiser rolled in, lights flashing, but siren muted as though it wanted to slip into the scene without announcing too much. Behind it, a second car followed, heavier, its grille bearing the dented scars of years on city streets. The two vehicles stopped in a staggered formation, boxing in Mercer's driveway. Out stepped Officer Janet O'Connor, her auburn hair tied back, her expression sharp and businesslike. She was 35, 6 years on the force, with a record clean enough to rise quickly, but not spotless. Complaints of unnecessary stops and demeaning language lingered in her personnel file, all dismissed quietly. Behind her came Sergeant Luis Delgado, a veteran with 15 years of service, his bulk filling out the Navy uniform, his jaw shadowed by a day's stubble. To the watching neighbors, their arrival meant order. To Mercer, it meant escalation. His training told him exactly how this would unfold: more officers, more authority, more pressure. "What have we got?" Delgado asked, eyes scanning the scene. Callahan's grin widened, relief spilling across his face like gasoline to flame. "Suspicious male," he said, gripping Mercer's arm tighter for show. "Claims he lives here. Says this is his house, his car. But we all know the type." Refusing to comply. O'Connor's eyes darted to the Tesla, to the manicured lawn, to the colonial house towering behind Mercer. She tilted her head, skeptical, but not of Callahan. Her doubt was directed at Mercer. "Do you have documentation?" she asked, her voice clipped. Mercer inhaled slowly. "My wallet, which your officer has already searched. My keys, which he tossed on the ground." His tone was calm, steady, like a teacher repeating himself for inattentive students. O'Connor bent, scooping up the keys, her eyes narrowing at the BMW fob and the heavy brass house key. She twirled them once in her palm. "Could be stolen," she murmured. The crowd shifted. Evelyn's live stream captured the moment in full clarity. The skepticism, the refusal to accept the simplest evidence. The comments scrolled in a furious storm. "Are you kidding me? House keys equal proof. This is profiling live on camera." Delgado stepped forward, his presence heavier, his tone edged with authority. "Sir, if you truly live here, you'll have no problem opening that front door for us, right just to prove it." Mercer's lips tightened. He'd seen this tactic before, layering humiliation with forced compliance. His own property, his own keys, his own door, and yet he was being asked to prove existence like a trespasser. 9 minutes had passed since the first confrontation. It felt like hours. The crowd had swelled 15 neighbors, maybe 20. Phones up, voices hushed. Some looked sympathetic, others satisfied, as if waiting for Mercer to trip, to fall, to confirm the story they'd already written in their heads. "This is my home," Mercer said again. Deliberate calm. He nodded toward the mailbox at the edge of the driveway, where black letters gleamed against white paint. Ellison Mercer, 142 Maple Court. Delgado barely glanced at it. "Names on mailboxes can be faked," he said. His words carried no real logic, but his tone carried the weight of authority. And for some in the crowd, that was enough. Evelyn's voice trembled as she narrated into her phone. "They're ignoring everything. The keys, the ID, the mailbox. Nothing is enough because of the color of his skin." Her livestream ticked past 58,000 viewers. Dana Williams from Channel 7 was 30 seconds out. CNN's social team had already clipped the video of Callahan's shove, replaying it in real time to thousands more. O'Connor stepped closer, holding the keys up like evidence in a courtroom. "These don't prove anything. You could have lifted them. Copies are easy." Mercer exhaled, controlled. He could feel the handcuffs cutting deeper into his wrists, steel digging into bone. His voice dropped lower, carrying only enough for the officers to hear. "Every step you take digs the hole deeper. Badge numbers don't disappear. Live streams don't vanish." But Delgado didn't hear it as a warning, he heard it as defiance. He squared his shoulders, gesturing toward the patrol cars. "If you can't prove residence immediately, we'll sort it out downtown." The words rippled through the crowd. Downtown. A code, but everyone understood the station. The holding cell, the booking photos. A man in a suit reduced to a number, his dignity stripped under fluorescent lights. The livestream comments section erupted. "No! Don't let them take him. He's FBI, wait, is he? Look at his lapel pin, screenshot that." Evelyn zoomed in again, her voice shaking with urgency. "They're blind to it. They don't see what's in front of them." 10:12 a.m. The air vibrated with anticipation. The sound of engines was louder now, another vehicle heavier than a cruiser rolling fast down Maple Court. Dark glass federal plates. Evelyn's camera caught it before anyone else did, and her voice cracked. "Oh my God! Those are black SUVs!" But Callahan wasn't watching the road. He was tightening his grip, his voice louder, his words meant for the crowd. "You see? He won't cooperate, won't prove anything. That's guilt right there. Plain and simple." Mercer straightened as much as the cuffs allowed. He turned his head just enough for his voice to carry across the yard, toward the gathering neighbors, toward Evelyn's camera. "I don't have to prove where I live. This is my home. You're watching Prejudice at work." The crowd murmured. Even the Wilson twins lowered their phones for a moment, stunned by the calm authority in his tone. Delgado shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flicking once, just once, toward the growing line of cars pulling up at the far end of the street. Something in his gut told him this wasn't routine anymore, but pride kept his jaw locked. O'Connor folded her arms, keys still dangling, her expression skeptical. "You'll forgive us if we don't just take your word for it," she said sharply. Mercer met her gaze with eyes that didn't flinch. "And you'll forgive me if I remind you federal law doesn't bend to neighborhood prejudice." Evelyn's livestream spiked past 70,000 viewers. Her voice shook but carried conviction. "He's warning them. They don't hear it. But the world does." 10:13 a.m. The black SUVs were seconds away. 10:13 in the morning, and Silverwood Estates was no longer the quiet fortress of $2 million homes it had been just 20 minutes earlier. The street, usually filled only with the hum of sprinklers and the soft buzz of electric SUVs, was now a stage. Every driveway had become a front-row seat, every porch a balcony. Phones glowed in dozens of hands, recording, streaming, archiving. Yet, even with truth spilling across 70,000 livestream screens, Silverwood itself was split. On one side, the whispers of support. Mrs. Patterson, clutching the leash of her anxious poodle, spoke just loud enough for the Hendersons beside her to hear, "I've seen him. He jogs past my house every morning at 7:30. That's his home. This is wrong." The Hendersons nodded, though their voices never rose above a murmur. The Wilson twins, their phones still raised, traded uneasy glances. One finally whispered, "He doesn't look guilty. He looks in control." On the other side, louder, bolder, came Richard Dalton. He was 52 years old, head of the Homeowners Association, the self-appointed guardian of Silverwood standards. His collared golf shirt stretched over his stomach, his HOA badge clipped proudly to his belt like a sheriff's star. His voice carried sharp and certain, slicing the air so the officers could hear every word. "He doesn't belong here," Dalton declared. "We've had 3 burglaries this year. Just last month, the Johnsons' place was hit. And now we've got this man loitering, acting suspicious, refusing to cooperate. This is exactly how it starts." His words rippled through the gathering like a stone cast into a pond. A few neighbors nodded hesitantly, not out of conviction, but out of fear, the kind of fear that had built Silverwood's gates in the first place. Others shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to challenge Dalton openly. His voice had weight here, his opinion often carrying more sway than facts. Officer Callahan seized the moment. "Exactly," he barked, tightening his grip on Mercer's arm. "Community's concerned. See, it's not just me. Everyone knows something's off." Delgado's jaw flexed. O'Connor folded her arms, her skepticism hardening into something closer to certainty. But Mercer's calm voice cut through the noise, even as the handcuffs dug into his wrists. 3 burglaries in a neighborhood of 212 homes does not justify racial suspicion, he said evenly. Statistics don't erase truth. I've lived here since 2022. I've paid $47,000 a year in taxes to maintain these very streets. And you, Mr. Dalton, have never once spoken to me. Dalton's face flushed crimson. "I don't need to speak to you to know you don't fit here." He spat his words, dripping with the venom of certainty masquerading as security. The livestream audience now past 85,000 detonated. Classic HOA racism. He's citing his property taxes in handcuffs, and they still don't believe him. Dalton is the face of complicity. Write that name down. Mrs. Grant, still live-streaming from across the street, steadied her trembling voice. Richard Dalton is lying. He's never once welcomed Mr. Mercer. He's never once acknowledged him. This is bias, pure bias. Dalton turned on her, his voice sharp. "Stay out of this, Evelyn. You don't know what you're talking about." But Evelyn didn't flinch. 71 years of life, 32 years cataloging truth in library archives had trained her well. She lifted her phone higher. "The world knows exactly what I'm talking about," she shot back. 10:14 a.m. The black SUVs were less than 1 minute away. Callahan shoved Mercer again, feeding off Dalton's support. "See, the neighbors agree. He doesn't belong. Let's wrap this up and haul him in." The Wilson twins finally found their voices. One shouted, "That's not true. We've seen him here for years." Their words cracked the silence bold enough to pierce Dalton's authority. Mrs. Patterson added, "He's a neighbor, not a suspect." The crowd was no longer a single murmur. It was a split chorus, supportive voices trembling, but present defensive voices louder, clinging to prejudice. The divide was no longer about Mercer's home. It was about the soul of Silverwood. Delgado raised a hand, trying to assert control. "Everyone calm down. We need to verify facts." But his voice carried less weight than Dalton's, less certainty than Callahan's, less conviction than Evelyn's live stream echoing into 85,000 digital homes. Mercer turned his head slightly, his eyes scanning the crowd. He saw the fracture lines clearly. Some neighbors watched with shame, others with satisfaction. He understood then what he had always known. Prejudice wasn't just in the badge. It was in the silence of those who let it stand. "Bias doesn't require a uniform," Mercer said aloud, his voice carrying across the street. "It requires only silence. Some of you know the truth. You've seen me. You know my name. Yet you say nothing." The Hendersons lowered their eyes. The Wilsons looked torn. Mrs. Patterson bit her lip, her hand tightening on the leash. Evelyn's voice cracked as she narrated into her phone. "He's right. We are watching silence protect prejudice." The comment section erupted again. "This is more than cops. It's the whole neighborhood. Complicity is violence too. Dalton is trying to rewrite reality while it's being filmed." 10:15 a.m. The black SUVs turned onto Maple Court, their engines a low thunder. But still, Dalton's voice tried to dominate. "He doesn't belong," Dalton repeated louder now. His face flushed, his words desperate. "These officers are doing their job. We built this neighborhood to be safe. Safe from people like him." The words landed heavy. Some neighbors gasped. Others nodded silently. But Mercer only lifted his chin, his calm more dangerous than anger. "This is my home," he said again, not to Dalton, not to Callahan, but to the crowd, to the live stream, to the tens of thousands watching. "I will not justify my existence to satisfy your fear. Fear does not erase fact. Fear does not erase truth." The live stream crossed 90,000 viewers. Dana Williams's news van screeched around the corner, camera crew spilling out. National networks were dialing in, and at that exact second, the black SUVs slowed to a stop at the end of the street. Tinted windows reflected the morning sun. Neighbors who had doubted, who had nodded at Dalton's words, suddenly faltered. Their certainty cracked. Something larger was arriving, something their HOA rules could not contain. Evelyn's voice trembled into her phone. "This is it. The line has been drawn. The community has shown its divide. Now the world will decide which side it believes." 10:15 in the morning. The handcuffs clicked tighter, steel teeth gnawing deeper into Dr. Anthony Mercer's wrists. Each ratcheted notch was meant to strip away dignity, to mark him not as a homeowner or a federal leader, but as a suspect, boxed in, diminished, humiliated. The metal cut through fabric and skin, alike sharp ridges pressing against bone. Officer Callahan leaned into the act, his face close enough that Mercer could smell the bitter mix of sweat and stale coffee clinging to him. He wanted the crowd to see his control, to believe the narrative Dalton had just reinforced, that this man didn't belong, that his presence was intrusion, not ownership. But Mercer didn't flinch. He didn't jerk away. Instead, he lifted his head, turned slowly, and fixed his gaze directly on Callahan. The eyes of a man who had interrogated terrorists, debriefed presidents, and outlasted 23 years of navigating a system designed to crush him. His voice came out low, precise, and dangerous in its calm. "Remember your badge number." 4 words. No raised tone, no violent threat. Just an instruction, clear, deliberate, devastating. For a moment, Callahan's confidence cracked. His hands faltered slightly on the cuffs. His mouth twitched as though he wanted to smirk, but couldn't quite summon it. He swallowed hard, though he tried to disguise it as a cough. The weight of those words landed heavier than any shove. "Are you threatening me, boy?" Callahan barked, his voice suddenly sharper, louder, covering his unease. But Mercer's face remained unmoved. "I am telling you to remember it. Badge number 4729. You will hear it again." The crowd stilled. Even Dalton, who had been puffing himself up only moments earlier, shifted uncomfortably. Evelyn's livestream microphone caught everything, broadcasting the exchange to 93,000 viewers. The comments exploded in real time. "He just warned him. That's not fear, that's power. Who is this man?" Callahan tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "What's that supposed to mean? You think you're smart?" His grip tightened on Mercer's arm again, desperate to reclaim control. But Mercer didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence was the answer. Then came the buzz. From his pocket, still held in Callahan's hand, Mercer's phone vibrated violently, the screen glowing with a name that Evelyn's live stream caught in crystal clarity: Deputy Director Lawson. 10:16 a.m. First buzz. Callahan snorted, holding the phone up like a prop in his performance. "Oh, look at this deputy director. Must be your dealer, huh? Or your lawyer. Want me to answer for you?" The crowd murmured. Some neighbors exchanged glances. Others shifted back. But Evelyn's audience erupted. "That says Deputy Director. Lawson. As in FBI play stupid officer, keep digging." Mercer let his gaze flick to the phone, then back to Callahan. Calm. Silent. He didn't nod. He didn't shake his head. He simply let the buzz fade, unanswered. 10:16 and 30 seconds. Second buzz. Same caller. O'Connor frowned slightly now, the first hint of hesitation flickering across her professional mask. Delgado rubbed the back of his neck, eyes narrowing at the screen, but he said nothing. Callahan grinned wider, mistaking silence for submission. Not answering smart. Because once you're booked, none of your little friends will matter. Mercer exhaled his voice, dropping again to a tone meant only for Callahan's ears. "Every second you refuse to see what's in front of you will cost you more than you can imagine." Callahan blinked. The words cut deeper than he expected. He barked louder, trying to drown the unease. "Shut your mouth." 10:17 a.m. Third buzz. The phone vibrated so hard in Callahan's hand that it rattled against the metal of Mercer's cuffs. This time the screen lit brighter, almost theatrical, as if the world itself wanted to underline the name. Deputy Director Lawson Urgent. The livestream count hit 98,000. Dana Williams's van was on the street, now Channel 7's logo gleaming in the sun. National cameras were seconds away. Callahan's laugh wavered. He held the phone higher, projecting bravado. "Deputy Director? Cute trick. Probably your buddy playing games. Think you're scaring me?" "Think again." Mercer finally turned his head fully toward him, his wrists bleeding faintly from the cuffs. His eyes locked into Callahan's, and his words were delivered like a sentence in a courtroom. "You will wish you had listened. Badge number 4729. The crowd was utterly silent. Even Dalton's bravado seemed to shrink, his jaw clenching nervously. O'Connor shifted, eyes flicking toward Delgado. Delgado's fingers twitched near his radio instincts, screaming that this wasn't unfolding the way it should. The live stream broke 100,000 viewers. Comments blurred across the screen. "He's baiting them." "No, he's not baiting. He's documenting. This officer has no idea who he's dealing with." 10:18 a.m. Fourth buzz. The phone vibrated like a drumbeat, relentless, inescapable. Callahan's hand trembled slightly as he gripped it. The name glowed again, brighter, undeniable Deputy Director Lawson. O'Connor finally spoke, her voice quieter than before. "Brian, maybe you should answer it." But Callahan shook his head violently, his pride anchoring him. "No, I'm handling this. He's nothing, just a liar with expensive toys." "You'll see." Mercer smiled faintly for the first time. It wasn't joy. It wasn't mockery. It was inevitability. The smile of a man who had predicted this exact moment, down to the second. 10, 18, and 30 seconds. The black SUVs crept closer, 3 of them engines humming like low thunder. The crowd turned, drawn to the sound. The Wilson twins lowered their phones just long enough to gasp. Evelyn's voice whispered into her microphone, "They're here." But Mercer kept his eyes locked on Callahan. Calm, steady, terrifying in its patience. "I told you to remember your badge number," he said. Again, louder this time, so the neighbors, the live stream, the world could hear. 4729. Callahan's mouth went dry. He tried to form words, but the sound came out cracked. He looked at Delgado, at O'Connor, searching for affirmation for backup. But even they looked uneasy now. The phone buzzed a 5th time. The sound was deafening in the silence, and Mercer, cuffed, pressed against his own car, bleeding at the wrists, finally tilted his head just slightly. "You should answer that." 10:19 in the morning. The 5th buzz rattled against Officer Callahan's palm, vibrating so violently that even the neighbors closest to him could hear it. The screen glowed once more, that same insistent name burning into the glass, Deputy Director Lawson Urgent. For a moment, the cul-de-sac seemed suspended. The crowd's whispers died. Evelyn Grant's live-stream microphone caught the sound of wind in the trees, the faint yapping of Mrs. Patterson's poodle, the nervous shuffle of shoes on concrete. 107,000 people were watching in real time, and even through the digital ether they could feel the moment cresting toward something irreversible. Mercer's voice, calm as ever, sliced through the quiet. "Answer it. Now." On speaker. Callahan hesitated. His throat constricted, his hand trembling, though he tried to mask it with a scoff. "Fine," he snapped, pressing the green button, the phone's speaker crackling as it came alive. "This is Deputy Director Lawson." The voice boomed, sharp, authoritative, carrying the cadence of someone who gave orders to hundreds daily. "Who am I speaking with?" Callahan smirked for the crowd, his bravado a fragile shell. "This is Officer Callahan's Silverwood Estates patrol. We've got a trespasser here refusing to comply. Claims he lives here." There was silence on the line for half a beat, then Lawson's voice came back like a hammer striking steel. "You have just detained FBI Director Anthony Mercer." The words detonated like an explosion across Maple Court. The crowd froze, jaws dropping, breaths catching. Evelyn gasped audibly, her phone nearly slipping from her grip. The Wilson twins stumbled back a step, their cameras shaking. Even Dalton Chest, puffed with arrogance, moments earlier staggered, as if the ground had shifted beneath him. The live stream surged. 120,000, 130,000, 140,000. Screens lit up across the nation. Hashtags erupted. Director Mercer. Silverwood shame. Justice in real time. Sergeant Delgado's face went pale. O'Connor's mouth parted, words forming but not landing. Callahan, for a moment, looked like a man staring at a tidal wave rushing toward him. His smirk collapsed into something closer to disbelief. Lawson's voice thundered again from the phone. "Release him! Immediately!" "But pride is a stubborn disease." Callahan barked back, his tone defensive, shaky. "Yeah, right. FBI Director. In this neighborhood, wearing that suit. You think I'm stupid?" Mercer lifted his chin, his calm expression now edged with the faintest smirk the kind that comes from inevitability. He didn't speak, didn't need to. The power of silence weighed more than Callahan's shouted words. Evelyn's audience skyrocketed. 150,000. Then 170. Then 200,000. Comments flew like sparks from a fire. He's FBI director. This cop's career is done. History is happening live. Dalton's voice wavered, but he tried to salvage his authority. That can't be true, he stammered. If he was FBI director, why would he live here? Why wouldn't we know? Mrs. Patterson snapped back, her voice quivering but strong. Because you never asked. Because you never cared. 10:20 in the morning. The black SUVs rolled to a stop at the end of Maple Court. Doors opened in unison, heavy and deliberate, and 6 agents in dark suits stepped out, earpieces gleaming in the sunlight. Their formation was precise, practiced, unmistakably federal. The cul-de-sac, once ruled by Callahan's arrogance, was now under new command. Lawson's voice came through the phone one last time. Officer Callahan, badge number 4729. Your actions have been documented and broadcast to hundreds of thousands. You have exactly 60 seconds to remove those cuffs, or you will answer to federal authorities for unlawful detention of the FBI director. The line went dead. The silence that followed was deafening. Callahan's face drained of color. The weight of his badge, once a shield, now felt like an anchor dragging him under. He glanced at O'Connor, at Delgado, searching for rescue, for affirmation. None came. O'Connor stepped back. Delgado muttered under his breath, "Dear God." Evelyn's live stream spiked again. 220,000. Then 240. Then 250,000. News outlets had latched onto the feed. CNN flashed a breaking Chiron FBI director detained in racial profiling incident. Mrs. Patterson whispered, "He warned you. He told you to remember your badge number." Callahan's hands shook against the cuffs. His pride fought against the inevitable, but inevitability was already here, stepping out of SUVs, boots striking pavement in perfect rhythm. A woman in her late 40s, tall, her black suit, immaculate, strode forward with a presence that silenced the street. Deputy Director Lawson herself. The crowd parted instinctively. Dalton stumbled back, his HOA badge suddenly absurd, meaningless in the presence of real power. Evelyn whispered into her phone, her voice thick with awe. "That's Lawson. That's the Deputy Director." 280,000 viewers. Lawson's voice carried like a blade. "Officer Callahan, release the director. Now." But Callahan's pride clung, a drowning man gripping driftwood. His voice cracked. This is some kind of setup. He doesn't belong here. He can't. Enough." Lawson's command snapped like thunder. "This is the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You have humiliated him, profiled him, and assaulted him on his own property. Cameras are rolling. Every second is evidence." The handcuffs felt like fire now against Mercer's skin, but his eyes never wavered. He looked at Callahan once more, his calm gaze like a mirror reflecting everything back. "Badge number 4729. He repeated louder now, so every neighbor, every camera, every viewer heard it. The live stream crossed 300,000. Callahan's knees trembled. His mouth opened, but only a stammer emerged. I didn't." "You did," Lawson cut in coldly. "And the world has seen it." Mercer straightened his shoulders as much as the cuffs allowed. The stillness in his posture, the quiet certainty in his presence was more commanding than any shouted order. The humiliation had not broken him, it had revealed him. 10:21 in the morning. 20 minutes after the first shove against the Tesla Silverwood Estates stood transformed. A gated neighborhood that had prided itself on exclusion now found itself at the epicenter of national reckoning. The live stream hit 350,000. Helicopters began circling overhead, their blades chopping the air. News vans crowded the entrance. America was watching in real time as arrogance met authority, and authority belonged not to Callahan or Dalton, but to the man they had handcuffed and the institution he commanded. And still Mercer did not raise his voice. He simply breathed calm and steady, his silence louder than any accusation. 10:22 in the morning. The hum of engines deepened into a roar as 3 black SUVs rolled fully into Silverwood Estates, their federal plates glinting under the sharp sunlight. They didn't just drive, they advanced like predators, cutting clean lines into a pristine cul-de-sac that had until this morning never seen such power at its doorstep. The crowd instinctively stepped back. Even the Wilson twins, who had filmed everything without flinching, lowered their phones for a beat, stunned by the sheer presence. Doors opened in perfect sequence. 6 agents emerged, their dark suits pressed, their earpieces gleaming. They moved with the precision of men and women who had rehearsed this walk hundreds of times, each step measured, coordinated, and deliberate. They didn't shout. They didn't posture. They didn't need to. Their very silence was authority. At the front strode Deputy Director Lawson, her stride sharp, her jaw set, her eyes scanning the scene with surgical precision. She was 50 years old, 6 feet tall in low heels, and she carried the kind of presence that silenced even the boldest. Her voice, when it came, needed no amplification. "Officer Callahan," she said, her tone cutting across the cul-de-sac like a scalpel. Callahan stiffened, his hand still hovering awkwardly near Mercer's arm. His lips parted, but no sound came. The bravado he'd clung to for nearly half an hour was gone, stripped by 4 words. Lawson didn't wait. She lifted a slim black folder from under her arm, opened it with crisp efficiency, and began to read aloud. "Officer Brian Callahan, badge number 4729, 12 years on the Silverwood Police Department. 17 official complaints in the past 24 months, 90% involving racial bias or excessive force." The words fell heavy, undeniable. The crowd gasped collectively. Dalton shifted on his feet, his HOA badge suddenly absurd in his pocket. O'Connor closed her eyes briefly, as if each line was a stone dropping into her chest. Delgado muttered something under his breath, too soft for anyone to catch, but his shoulders sagged with the weight of truth. Lawson continued, her voice steady, merciless. "June 2023. Racial profiling allegations sustained. August 2023. Excessive force complaint dismissed due to technicality. November 2023. Unlawful detention settled out of court. January 2024. Harassment complaint unresolved." Each date, each charge was another nail hammered into the coffin of Callahan's career. Evelyn's live stream microphone caught every syllable, broadcasting to over 400,000 viewers now. Screenshots flew across Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. His name, his record, his shame, all public. Callahan tried to speak, his voice trembling. Those were dismissed. I was cleared." Lawson closed the folder with a sharp snap. Dismissed does not mean innocent. Dismissed means protected. Until today. The live stream erupted. 17 complaints. 90% racial. This is systemic. This man should have been fired years ago. Mrs. Patterson gasped aloud. All this time. And they kept him on the streets. Mercer, still handcuffed, but standing straighter now, turned his head slightly, his calm gaze settling on Callahan. "I told you to remember your badge number," he said, each word deliberate. "Now, the country will remember it too." Lawson pivoted sharply, her eyes sweeping the cul-de-sac, her voice rising for the crowd as much as the live stream. Silverwood Police Department has been under federal monitoring for 18 months as part of Operation Sentinel, a program designed to document systemic bias in local policing. Agent Mercer's assignment was to test response protocols in racially homogeneous, high-income neighborhoods with a history of suspicious person calls. The crowd erupted into murmurs. Evelyn gasped into her phone. "Oh my God, he was part of an investigation." Dalton's face drained of color. "You mean this was a setup?" Mercer turned his calm gaze on him, his tone sharp but controlled. "No, Mr. Dalton. I bought a house. I stood in my driveway. The setup was yours. The bias, the assumptions, the complicity, that was all you." Dalton's mouth opened and closed, like a fish, words failing him for the first time all morning. Lawson pressed forward, her voice now aimed directly at the cameras. "For 18 months, Operation Sentinel has been collecting data from 47 police departments across the country. Silverwood ranks in the 97th percentile for racial disparity in stops, detentions, and use of force. That means only 3% of departments perform worse." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Hendersons looked at each other, horrified. The Wilson twins lowered their phones, their faces pale. Mrs. Patterson pulled her poodle close, tears welling in her eyes. Evelyn's live stream surged again. 450,000. Then 500,000. Helicopters hovered overhead, their blades chopping the air into pieces. National anchors were already preparing breaking news segments. Lawson turned back to Callahan, her eyes narrowing. "You, Officer Callahan, have just provided us with a case study, live, public, undeniable. Your actions today are evidence of systemic bias in its purest form. Congratulations, you've made the textbook." The words hit harder than any slap. Callahan's knees buckled slightly, but he remained standing, his pride refusing to collapse completely. His face was pale, his lips trembling, his hands shaking so hard the phone nearly slipped from his grip. O'Connor finally spoke, her voice small. "Deputy Director, we didn't know he was, Lawson snapped her head toward her. "You didn't ask. You assumed. You escalated. You humiliated. That is bias. And that is why we are here." Delgado tried to salvage something. "Ma'am, we were just—" "Enough," Lawson cut him off, her voice like thunder. "You were not just anything. You were complicit." The silence that followed was suffocating. Mercer shifted slightly, wincing as the cuffs dug deeper. "Deputy Director," he said quietly, but loud enough for all to hear, "these handcuffs have been on long enough." Lawson gestured sharply. One of her agents stepped forward, bolt cutters gleaming in the sunlight. In a single motion, the steel snapped, the cuffs falling to the ground with a metallic clang that echoed like a verdict. Mercer rubbed his wrists, straightened his suit jacket, and finally looked like what he was, the most powerful lawman in America, standing on his own driveway. The live stream crossed 580,000. Comments blurred faster than Evelyn's eyes could follow. "This is historic." Director Mercer just flipped the script. "Operation Sentinel, round few, game changer." Lawson wasn't finished. She turned back to the crowd, her gaze sweeping every neighbor, every officer, every lens. "Today, you've witnessed why Operation Sentinel exists. Bias is not hypothetical. It is not abstract. It is here in Silverwood Estates on full display. And it ends today." Dalton slunk backward. His authority shattered, his voice silent. Evelyn, tears streaming down her cheeks, whispered into her phone, "Justice is finally visible." 10:24 in the morning. 25 minutes after the first confrontation, Silverwood Estates had transformed from a haven of gated complacency into the epicenter of a federal reckoning. And Director Anthony Mercer, no longer a humiliated man in handcuffs, now stood as the embodiment of systemic truth revealed. 10:25 in the morning. 26 minutes since Officer Callahan's first barked command shattered the stillness of Silverwood Estates, and the cul-de-sac had become a courtroom without walls. The jury was not 12 peers, it was 500,000 live-stream viewers, dozens of neighbors, and the national press that was now swarming the gated entrance. Deputy Director Lawson stood at the center black folder closed at her side like a gavel waiting to strike again. Her agents flanked her in perfect symmetry, forming a shield around Director Anthony Mercer, who now stood unshackled, his suit wrinkled, but his dignity untouched. The cuffs that had marked him as a suspect just minutes earlier now lay on the asphalt, glinting under the sun like evidence of arrogance. Lawson's voice carried again, not just for Silverwood, but for the nation. Effective immediately, Silverwood Police Department is under federal review. Operation Sentinel findings will be presented to Congress within 30 days. Every arrest, every complaint, every racial disparity in this department's record will be audited. The crowd gasped. Sergeant Delgado muttered under his breath, "Congress!" as though the word itself carried a death sentence. O'Connor's face flushed pale, her lips parting, but no sound escaping. Callahan, once loud enough to dominate a street, now stood silent, the weight of 17 complaints finally pressing down like a mountain. Mercer stepped forward, his wrists still raw and red from the cuffs, his voice calm, but now infused with the authority of his true position. "You thought this was humiliation. You thought this was control. But what you've done is pull back the curtain on something much larger. And the curtain does not fall again." Evelyn's livestream ticked higher. 600,000 viewers. 620. 650,000. The comments scrolled too quickly to read, but a few flickered bold national reckoning. History live. Silverwood. Chapter Ground Zero. Lawson opened the folder again, her tone clinical but devastating. Officer Janet O'Connor. 6 years on the force. 4 discrimination complaints, 2 unresolved. Sergeant Luis Delgado. 15 years. 9 excessive force complaints, 5 involving minority residents. Pattern, not accident. Silence, not oversight. The names dropped like stones into a pond, each ripple shaking the neighbors who had trusted their police to keep order. The Hendersons, once silent, looked horrified. The Wilson twins lowered their cameras, glancing uneasily at each other. Mrs. Patterson whispered a prayer under her breath, her poodle whimpering at her feet. Richard Dalton, desperate to reclaim some footing, stepped forward. "You can't just come in here and tear down our police department. This community relies on them." Mercer's gaze cut to him, steady, unflinching. "Relies on them to do what Mr. Dalton, to harass, to humiliate, to criminalize neighbors who pay the same taxes you do. Safety built on exclusion is not safety. It's control. And control built on fear is not justice. It is tyranny." Dalton's face flushed crimson. His mouth opened, but this time no words followed. 10:27 a.m. helicopters thundered overhead, their shadows sliding across the immaculate lawns. News anchors now stood just beyond the SUVs, broadcasting live. CNN's Chiron read, "FBI Director detained by local police, federal response underway." Fox News countered with "Federal overreach or local bias, Silverwood incident raises questions." MSNBC blared, "Operation Sentinel systemic bias exposed." The world was no longer watching from afar. The world was watching in real time. Lawson gestured to one of her agents, who stepped forward with a tablet. A large screen flickered to life, mounted to the side of the mobile command van that had just rolled in. Charts appeared traffic stops by race complaint ratios, disciplinary records. The data was merciless. Black residents of Silverwood Lawson read are 3.9 times more likely to be stopped for suspicious activity than white residents. Yet contraband discovery in those stops is 41% lower. This is not just bias, it is documented inefficiency. Gasps again. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably. The HOA facade of standards crumbled under the weight of math. Evelyn's live stream hit 700,000. A single comment flashed, "Bold data doesn't lie." Mercer stepped forward again, his voice carrying like a verdict. Today is not about one officer. It is not even about one department. It is about the assumption that black existence must be justified, explained, proven. That assumption dies today here on this street, in front of your cameras, in front of your neighbors, in front of your own conscience. Callahan's knees buckled slightly, his shoulders sagging. The man who had shoved Mercer into steel now looked like a child caught in a storm. His mouth opened, whispering weakly, "I didn't know." Mercer's eyes narrowed. "You didn't care to know." 10:28 a.m. The live stream surged past 800,000. National anchors began cutting live feeds directly to Evelyn's shaky phone, her voice trembling but resolute. "This is history," she whispered to her audience. "This is accountability." Lawson's voice boomed again. "As of this moment, Silverwood Police Department funding is frozen pending compliance with federal oversight. Federal monitors will be embedded here within 30 days. And Officer Callahan," she turned to face him fully, "you are suspended, effective immediately pending federal charges for unlawful detention of a federal officer under color of law." The words hit like thunder. Callahan's head dropped. His badge felt heavier than lead, the weight of shame bending his spine. The crowd murmured, some gasping, others whispering relief. Dalton turned away, his authority hollow, his silence damning. Evelyn's live stream spiked again. 900,000. 950,000. Then 1 million. The nation was no longer watching Silverwood, it was inside it. Mercer adjusted his cufflinks, his voice quiet, but carrying his composure once again a weapon. This is not the end. This is the beginning. Operation Sentinel is not just here. It is in 47 departments across this country. Silverwood is not unique. Silverwood is a mirror. 10:29 a.m. The mirror cracked. Neighbors who had nodded silently at Dalton now looked away, shame in their eyes. Mrs. Patterson wept quietly, whispering, "I should have spoken sooner." The Wilson twins posted their final video. "We thought this was normal. It wasn't. It was wrong." Evelyn, her phone still steady, whispered, "The truth is visible." At last. The live stream closed in on 1.1 million viewers. A trending hashtag exploded, "Yonder remember the badge, 4729. Lawson gave the final order. "Pack it up. We're done here." But Mercer wasn't done. He stepped forward, turning to face the crowd, the cameras, the millions watching across the nation. His voice was steady, deliberate, every syllable sharp enough to cut through the noise. "Remember this moment. Remember what you saw. Remember that silence protects power, but witness creates justice. Today, Silverwood was a test. Tomorrow, it will be your city, your street, your conscience. Don't wait for federal agents to tell you what you already know. Stand, speak, record, document. Because the fight for justice is not mine alone, it is yours." 10:30 a.m. Exactly 31 minutes after a patrolman saw a black man in a suit and assumed guilt, the story was no longer about humiliation, it was about transformation. And Silverwood Estates, once a fortress of exclusion, now stood as the unlikely birthplace of a national reckoning. What happened in Silverwood Estates was more than one man in handcuffs. It was a mirror held up to America. In just 31 minutes, starting at 9:59 in the morning and ending at 10:30 sharp, we watched a false assumption unravel into a national reckoning. We saw 17 complaints buried under paperwork finally read aloud. We saw a neighborhood split between silence and truth. And we saw the simple power of one live stream, just a 71-year-old woman holding her phone ignite more than 1 million witnesses across the nation. The lesson is clear: injustice doesn't hide in shadows anymore. It happens in plain sight. And when it does, silence is complicity. Every citizen has a choice: look away or record. Pretend it isn't happening or confront it with evidence. Mrs. Evelyn Grant didn't need a badge or a title. She needed courage, a steady hand, and a phone with a working camera. That's it. Her decision to film became the tipping point. For American citizens, the message is urgent. Bias is not confined to small towns or to big cities. It is not limited by zip codes or gated walls. It exists in our schools, in our police departments, in our neighborhoods, and yes, in our own assumptions. If we want justice, we cannot wait for someone else to act. Every voice, every video, every shared truth adds weight to the scale. So here is your call to action. Don't just watch, participate. If you're one of the 1 million who witnessed Silverwood in real time, share this story with 5 friends today. If you're one of the tens of thousands who commented, keep speaking because your words shape perception. And if you're here for the first time, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss another account where silence meets resistance and resistance sparks change. Like this video, share it widely. And remember, change doesn't happen in years, it happens in minutes. 31 of them on a single Wednesday morning was enough to shift an entire nation's conversation. Don't let this be just a story you scrolled past. Let it be your reminder. Injustice is everywhere, but so is the power to expose it.